Well, welcome to the Life, Legacy, and Leadership podcast, the Brookhill podcast. Today I'm talking with Elizabeth Pulley. I know her as Elizabeth Yoakum because we worked camp together just a couple years back. It feels like it was just a few years ago. I know I arrived on the scene in 1997, but you were, what were your years as a camper? Kind of what was that? We're going to get into that. But Elizabeth is the executive director of the Child Advocacy Center, and so we want to talk a lot about that because that's what this is: life, legacy, leadership. We want to talk about your life, what's going on, and kind of the legacy you're building there, the legacy you built here, and then, of course, the leadership principles you learned here at Brookhill. So we want to get into what you do and who you are. Sure. And so maybe explain a little bit of that, but I don't want to go too much into it because I want to start with some of the Brookhill stuff, and then we'll jump into that. So.
Sure. So I'm an executive director of a nonprofit called the Children's Advocacy Centers of Arkansas, and we have 27 locations around the state of Arkansas where we serve, we provide free direct services to child abuse victims. So when a child has been abused in Arkansas, we're the agency that actually provides those services so they don't have to travel to an ER, a police station, or all those scary places. But it's one location they can receive all the services they need. That's
unbelievable. I love that because we worked here at camp together, and you're still working with kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're still making an impact. Just like you got the red T-shirt on, and so. That is so fun. And so, obviously, your heart for kids started here.
Absolutely. I mean, way back when I was even a camper, coming on the scene here, I was a camper for 6 summers and started in 4th grade. And actually, my first bunkhouse I was in was Percherons. And I still remember it was Percherons. And the funny thing about, arriving on the scene here is that I got in a bunkhouse without my friends, and so for my first year. And so my parents were really nervous about dropping me off and letting me stay, and I was a little nervous too. I remember that feeling, and when they left, I was like, I got this, I can do this as a 4th grader, and not with my friends, but, I just remember people saying, you're hardly ever in your bunkhouse, you're out in activities. And I wrote my parents a letter during the week, and my mom still has this letter. And
no way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My first week of camp, and it says, I want to be a counselor at Brookhill.
Oh, come on. As a 4th grader.
4th grader, first week of camp.
First week, not with your friends.
Not with my friends, and that's what I wrote in my letter home.
Come on. I always think God puts things in our hearts, and out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The scripture says that, and I think that's sitting in there. It's like, where did that come from? I mean, I can just name so many things that I've said that years later I was like, why did I even say that?
Right.
God had put that there. He was preparing my heart. He was preparing your heart.
Absolutely. And, I think probably what struck me, I grew up going to church and Christian family and all of that, but probably what struck me the most that first week of Brookhill as a 4th grader is being a Christian was fun.
Yes.
And it was about relationships. It was not legalistic. It was, I want to have a relationship now with Jesus on a day-to-day, and being a Christian can be fun. And so those are the things that probably stuck out to me, and I saw that in those red T-shirts.
Wow. I love that. And you were a camper, so it was like 1985. So you 4th grade, so you went maybe 6 summers.
6 summers.
Then you became a JC.
Yes.
And you had a unique experience as a JC because they needed help. And that would happen from time to time where people would get asked back. But you got asked back every week that first summer.
Yes, it was kind of bizarre and, just a God thing, ultimately. And I signed up to be a JC, super excited, waiting patiently, and, got a week. And then the end of May came around, and I was in high school, obviously, and I get a call from Tim Brooks at the end of May, and he goes, hey, Elizabeth, I had your application sitting on the desk, and I just picked it up, and we need some help during staff training. Can you come up here? I mean, I was 16 years old. And now I'm get invited to come staff training week and spend some other weeks at camp. It was life-changing. And I was super excited. Like, I wanted to leave that night to come up here. But I did. My parents were like, you need to wait till the next day. So I came up here the next day, and I worked 6 weeks the first summer. And then every summer after that, I worked all summer, and I was considered all summer staff that first summer because I was here so long. So I've worked, I never experienced working only 1 week. I experienced all summer staff for 7 summers.
Wow. And so did you run a bunkhouse? What bunkhouse did you run?
So my first year as a senior counselor, I was in the Galicinos, and then I moved up to the Phillies. And so, that was when bunkhouses were different sizes. So it was kind of like you worked your way up until the back of the Girls Hill. And so Galicinos and Phillies were the two that I really oversaw. And then, just also working with all the senior counselors, became kind of head of Girls Hill for a while. Then, at times I worked in the kitchen when they needed that. So did that when I was an AC also, and then became first aid counselor too.
Yeah, you did first aid. I think when I got on the scene, you did first aid maybe several years. What was your last summer? Was it?
My last summer was 98.
98. Okay, so you and I worked 2 summers together, I think, 97 and 98. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
I love it. When you remember back to those days, what were some of the things that you feel like you learned that maybe you implement today, like leadership stuff or, all the little sayings or slogans that would be in staff training? I mean, are there things that you say today that you use? Do you ever say something, in your professional and you're like, I got that from camp?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I mean, there's things that I do constantly that remind me of Brookhill, or like, the words coming out of my mouth sound like Hetty right now, or something like that. So a few examples, I really, really, really learned how to be a team player as a counselor at Brookhill. And a team player meaning that you have to trust your team. You work with your team day in and day out. The hard times, you have to work through it with them. So you learn to be a good team player.
That's great.
And I, have 17 directors that I work with across the state right now. And we have meetings and retreats and things with them constantly. And the first thing I did when I started in my position at the Children's Advocacy Centers was realizing that there's not trust built among these directors. And what I reflected back on was, hey, we learned some of those things when I was in staff training. So we did some team building. We did implemented just talking and listening to each other, collaborating together on projects, and trust was built. And I contribute that to what I learned as a counselor at Brookhill during staff training, working with everyone, because you have those hard days at camp where it's 100 degrees outside and you're like, I cannot do another council ring or another activity, but you have your team encouraging you, you got this, got this. And those times that you need to rest, you have to take advantage of those times to feel refreshed and to get up and keep going. So really, I have learned so much as being a leader. That I learned as a counselor at Brookhill. And I remember so many times Hetty and Tim and Brian and everybody that I worked with saying constantly, go back and build your own Brookhill. And I really didn't understand truly what that meant until I was an adult later in life. And I realized so much that it's really building your values and really building what you believe in your mission for serving others and implementing that back home. And that's what I have done. And I feel like that I have gone back and made my own Brookhill now.
I love that. And, you know, I've always worked here. You know, I mean, I was 16, 17, 16, I guess, when we first started out. And gosh, you must have been 24 at the time. So I was probably like a child on staff. But, you know, so I didn't realize early on what we had here.
Yes.
Until you talk to other people working in other places. And Hetty was so right. She built this culture here.
Yes.
You know, Tim, Brian, all these people, Steve, eventually. They built this culture here. And that's kind of been our encouragement, is that people need to build this, whether it's in their homes.
Yes.
You know, and Hetty was just like, you can build that. You can fix that, and you can. She's like, you know, just don't talk to each other like that. Just don't act like that. Don't do that. And so, you know, there's a better way. I feel like that was what she was always challenging us, is there's a better way to run your bunkhouse. There's a better way to run your activities. And that's basically what you've done at the CAC. You know, I've had friends in different businesses do the same thing, you know, whether it's church, profit, you know, nonprofit, home, whatever. You know, it's amazing how cultures can be built. It can be fun. People can get along. They can connect. And I think the one thing that I learned from Hetty was negative is natural. And people just allow that natural negativity. If I don't like them, I don't get along with them. They just allow that to fester, you know. And, hey, we... Thank you. The crowd.
Good job, David.
Yes, thank you very much. This is filmed before a live audience of one person and a clap switch over there. I love it. That's so fun. And so, you know, I did think of a story going back to a couple stories of us working together. You know, my first summer, I was playing basketball, and a basketball hit my pinky. And eventually I got it x-rayed, and it had broken it in 3 places.
Oh, wow.
And I remember Jadine telling me later on, because Jadine and I ended up working together. She was camp director that first summer in 97. You were first aid, and of course she had come out of the first aid.
Yes.
And, you know, she thought I was being a baby. You know, I was 16 years old, and I kept complaining. And I remember several counselors were like pulling, hey, let me pull on it like it's jammed. It's literally broken in 3 places. I have the actual x-ray here, Tyler. This is real. And so you guys didn't know I was this rookie. You didn't know what I was, but you were the first aid counselor and did a great job at the time. I don't know if you remember that story.
I don't remember that, but that's funny.
But I do remember you getting a splinter. The largest splinter I have ever seen.
Yes.
You were sitting up on the supply table that used to be up there, Tyler, the one that used to have, you remember it was the only supply shelf when you walked in the staff room to the right.
And it's actually where these boxes
all the boxes were on it.
All top.
She was just sitting on it during a staff meeting or something, and you got, I mean, it was an epic splinter that there was 3 or 4 of us, JD and myself, we were up there like, pulling that out of your leg.
I had to go to the doctor.
Oh, did they end up, because I think it broke, maybe they were.
Yes, I had to go to the doctor to get them to take it out because it was under the skin and it was huge. It was like this big for a splinter. And I just jumped off that table and the splinter went straight up in my leg. And I still have a scar.
Yes.
I mean,
No, this was a deal. No, this was a deal. I mean, it was what. Yes, it was that long. It was real thick. No, it was bad. I remember walking up there, and it was like it was an ER scene up there in the staff room.
And everybody had their opinion on how we should get it out.
That is the awesome thing about having so many leaders on staff is everybody's an expert of everything.
Oh, yeah.
And so
a big splinter, everybody thought they knew how to get that out.
Yeah. I was just observing. I was just there to help. I was the gopher.
I think you were probably laughing too.
There's no doubt. There was no doubt. Do you remember any fun stories like that you had, with Mev or Pirtle or, Steve? You're definitely. You're a strong leader, but you definitely do it from a softer side, and then you've got Steve, who there's nothing soft about my man, and so. I don't know, you have any fun stories from working?
So I remember one summer, and this was probably maybe my second or third summer, and still like AC, so kitchen or cabin or whatever, and it was like the summer of pranks.
Okay.
Everybody was playing pranks on all the other counselors constantly.
This must be why that got into staff training so
that
hardcore.
That is exactly why it's in there.
Because it's hardcore in there. You don't prank anybody. So this is why.
This is probably one of the reasons because of that time period. And, I mean, it was crazy. And it was like, who could beat other people over the top?
That's it.
And there were one week that there were so many boy cabins that they put them in the pavilion.
Okay.
So this was back when we had pavilion cabins. And so when the boys' cabins were so close, you can really do something to those boys' cabins.
Right.
And I remember there's several of us that I don't even know how we had this idea, but we basically, and I don't remember whose cabin I was in. It was as a boys' cabin. It was in the pavilion. And we went and got salt shakers and salted the counselors' beds. So, like, you know, you're hot and sweaty coming back and you lay in a bed of salt. That is not fun.
No,
so,
like
anyway, I don't even know why we had that, but we were all kind of, everybody was at something, you know, activity-wise, and so nobody was in their cabins, and we snuck back there, and we had salt shakers and salting the beds, and then all of a sudden, Brian Cato opened the door and caught us.
No.
And literally, I was leaning over the bed with a salt shaker like this, and he was trying to, you know, get onto us, but laughing at the same time. He could not hold it in.
Right.
So he's trying to, like, what are y'all doing? And then we would just start dying laughing too. So that was one of my favorite stories because
who would you have done that with?
It was probably other AC girls.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we did. And you know, one time I remember that's probably that same week that there was the crafts had these little tiny beads, to make like necklaces or bracelets or something with. And so one of the counselors got a huge bucket of those beads and put it in someone's bed, like under the covers. And so they did not know until they got in the bed. I mean, there was probably 1,000 of those beads right in the bed. So it was just constantly like this throughout the week. So I'm sure that is the whole reason why we don't prank.
That's right.
In staff training.
By the time I got into training, pranks had its whole section of teaching, and of course now we talk about it because it's true. You know, where does it stop? Were you here? Were you here when the coke hut burned down?
Yeah. Okay, so I was the one who found the coke hut.
You were the one. Because all I remember is walking down with the bunkhouse and it's smoldering.
Yes.
You know.
So it was me who found it. And I was actually working in the kitchen that week because Connie was at a conference. So I was the Connie that week.
Okay.
So I got up early to come down to start breakfast. And as you can imagine, I'm walking down 5 o'clock in the morning, and I look over at the coke hut, and it's not there anymore. And there's smoke. And I'm still half asleep, and I'm looking going, what in the world? And then I ran back, woke up Jadine, and said, the coke hut burnt down. And she was in the midst of sleeping. She had no idea either. I was like, you have to get up.
Right.
And, I mean, it was crazy.
Well, it was a Friday morning.
It was a Friday morning because
crucifixion was the night before. And in crucifixion, we use live torches on fire. And either it didn't stay in the bucket long enough or whatever, but it got leaned torch side against the building.
Yes.
And it didn't take a lot to figure that one out.
And the crazy thing is, too, like the trees next to it, there were still flames up the trees where you could see that it just burned the trees, which could have burnt the next couple of buildings, and it didn't.
No.
But the trees were also burnt. But it went up high.
Yeah.
And, I stayed over in Connie's old house, which is Hetty's house now, area, and to think I was that close and never saw or heard anything until I got up that next morning.
Yeah. No, that was wild. I didn't realize you were the one that found that.
I was the one who found it.
That was awesome. Gosh, our times here, it was just so fun.
Yes.
Working the staffs that we had from the Mevs, Simon, John, Kevin, all those different ones. Bev was on staff, Mev's sister. Just some amazing, people. And I know even just before I got on staff, you had the Rachel Reasoners, Rachel Hobbs now, and just, Mandy and Russ, and just incredible people that you got to work with, which are still your friends today. I saw in your office yesterday that you had a picture of those guys. So
yeah, I mean, friends for life. And just like I was telling you guys and others, that it's kind of like when you worked at Brookhill and went to Brookhill, you're in kind of a club, like, and then you meet someone later and go, oh, you went to Brookhill, and you have a connection. But the connection you make working with other counselors just runs deep. There's nothing like it. And it is a connection for life. And, always the saying, and I think people say this to this day, Brookhill friends are the best.
Yep.
And they truly are, because they understand you at a different level, and they've had the good and the hard times with you. And you basically lived together in this environment and community. So you thrive together, and you learn together, and you did everything together. And so I just can't say enough about the relationships and how we went deep together. And I was sharing with you yesterday that, the whole reason I went to Baylor University is because of Brookhill.
Wow.
And I really didn't know that much about Baylor till I was a counselor, and learned more about what Baylor was, and their mission and their values too. And I went down there and ended up going to college there, but there's a group of us that went to college there. And the cool thing about that is we worked together all summer, and we left, kind of on that Brookhill high, and we went back to Waco going, we're still going to do this.
Wow.
And we did it together. And it was, a Steve Robert, a James Pirtle, a Jessica Lewis, a Rachel Hobbs, Rebecca Reasoner. We all worked together, and we did it. Like, we went to church. We got up and had early morning prayer in the mornings and prayed once a week. We worshiped together. We led small groups together. We discipled and mentored college students. I mean, and, there's times where we went to dorms and apartments and knocked on doors and just asked if we could pray for people. And that was the influence Brookhill had on us, that we wanted to keep going and to influence others back at college.
I love that. Kevin and I have been talking about this quite a bit. There was a book written called Tribe. I can't remember who that's from. I've said it before. It's a really good book, but it just talks about the importance of having community. Of course, the Bible talks about it all the time.
Yes.
Having community, and that's what we had here at Brookhill. And going out, building your own Brookhill, I think, is about building that community. With people.
Right.
And I think that's what did it for me here. When I got here, I had never been around this many believers. And obviously, I've been in church my whole life. But to be around people who were real.
Yes.
Who really loved Jesus.
Right.
Who really lived it. Who really loved each other, and they weren't 50.
Right.
They were 18, 19, 20 years old. That's what changed my life. And I think that's what changes all of our lives the first year on staff. It's like, whoa, I'm not the only one.
Right.
Because sometimes where you're from, in school, church, whatever, you're sitting there, you're listening to youth group, and you're thinking, I want that youth pastor's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I want that. But, I look around and I feel like I think I'm the only one in this room that wants that.
Right, exactly.
And then you get to camp, and it's like, no, everybody here does. And we all had this common vision.
Yes.
And then to be able to go to Baylor.
Yes.
And live that out. And I just think there's something about that. If people can find that community,
yes.
You look at the anxiety today, and I know you deal with this, dealing with Gen Z, this new generation. They're so anxious, the mental health issues, and not that we didn't have mental health issues, but, I don't know. There's just some things about our culture today that I think drive some of those meters higher. That this book Tribe talks about. When you have those people in your corner, in your circle, what that does for you. The automatic therapy that's happening every day with those. I mean, what's that like? You're living with these people at Baylor. I mean, seriously, mental health wise, what's that doing for your mental health to have? I don't think we knew that back then.
No, we didn't.
But it was naturally happening.
Absolutely. And it is truly living out the Bible. You break bread together, you worship together, you live together in this community. And that's what you did as counselors, because you had that shared vision. And then we just took that and adapted it back to college to fit into our own culture there. And, we ate dinner together, we hung out together, we went to church together. Obviously, we didn't have every classes together, but we still were a part of each other's lives on a daily and weekly basis. And I actually lived with Jessica Lewis, and so she was my roommate in college and was a Brookhill counselor, and all of those people, a part of my wedding. And so we lived in community like that. Now looking back, we made our own Brookhill at Baylor, and that's exactly what we did.
I love that, because I think Brookhill is more a concept than it is a place.
Yes.
It really is. And that's what
true.
Hetty was wanting to do. She was wanting to get these values, and obviously they're biblical values,
of course,
into us and saying, go out. Is that not what Jesus did? He discipled
Absolutely.
people, and then he said, go out and build your own. It wasn't Brookhill, but build your own disciplship club that we had here. And I love that, which is what you have done at the CAC. Let's talk about the CAC.
Okay.
I know you kind of gave us a little headline of it, but I love it. So CAC is a group, we're partnered, and not just because you're running it, it's because it's a child-centered thing. I mean, that's what we at Brookhill, we're about kids. And so we want to support other nonprofits, other child-centered organizations, Boys and Girls Club, but CAC, the BCF, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, with teen suicide. But there's just some different organizations we're involved in. But we love the CAC because, can you give us some numbers? There's a lot of kids that we don't hear about.
Right. So Arkansas has a child abuse hotline, and they receive about 65,000 calls every year in Arkansas, just in Arkansas.
65,000 calls in Arkansas a year.
Yeah, and that's mind-blowing to a lot of people, because you think Arkansas is not that big. But that's 65,000 calls. It doesn't mean that all go to investigations,
Sure.
but of course that also means that's not everybody.
Right. It's not like every suspicious thing everyone calls. No, that's just the people that were brave enough to say, hey, something's not right here.
Exactly. And so when a child has been, it goes to investigation. So DHS or state police brings a child to one of our centers statewide, and they can receive a forensic interview that's recorded for prosecution. Their family receives advocacy support to help them navigate next steps. Some might need a place to live. They have to leave wherever they are because it's not safe anymore. They might need food. They might need clothing. They might need just, how do I engage with the legal process? What do I do? How do I take care of my child, now? And so we help them through all of that. And then we also offer medical exams if one is needed. So just to ensure that the child is safe, sometimes just a well-being exam is important, but also to collect evidence. So we do that. And then the most important part is the mental health counseling. So we offer a trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy for these children that can receive the hope and healing afterwards, and they can move on to be successful and overcome the trauma that they have experienced.
Yeah, you guys are such a bridge for the investigators,
Yes.
for the medical community,
Yes.
and even for the mental health community. I mean, you guys kind of are able, from what I've learned, to bring it all together. And it was like the CAC really thought about, okay, how does maybe from the perspective of a child, right?
Exactly.
Not from an investigation standpoint or a medical standpoint or even a therapy standpoint, but how does this kid feel?
Exactly.
What are they going through? And I love that you've talked about that.
Yeah, and I think that, the centers are child-friendly focused.
Yes,
so when
I
they
loved
walk
that.
in, it's colorful, there's toys, so things to bring them comfort when they walk in. And, one of the cool things I feel like is that there's handprints on the walls. And so kids that walk in for the first time actually get to see all the kids that went before them, just to show that they can be brave and that others have walked in the same footsteps that they have.
And those are in every center, right?
Those are in every center.
In every center, y'all have these canvases on the wall where a kid actually can put their hand in paint and put it on the wall, and that represents every life. I mean, they cover all the walls.
Thousands. And, in 2021, we served 11,200 kids at our child advocacy centers in Arkansas. That's the most ever in Arkansas's history. And it's crazy. And when I started about 5 years ago, we were serving about 3,000 to 4,000, and we have more than doubled our numbers.
Wow.
And so we want to continue to grow and to think about kids that live in rural areas of Arkansas. They still deserve top quality services.
Absolutely.
And so to get to them, that they have services, that they have the resources that they need, so they don't have to travel to Little Rock or to a large area, but they can stay right into their community and receive those services.
So I think you guys talk about something like 1 in 10 kids.
Right.
I mean, that's unbelievable. 1 in 10 kids have been sexually abused.
Yes.
You guys had 11,200 this last year. Normally it was around 3,000 that you saw. Is that more people are feeling safe to come forward? I wouldn't think there was a 3 times jump in that. However, the less Jesus we have in our society, and obviously even in a Christian circle, people make horrible, fleshly, stupid decisions. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, but I think the more that we can get Jesus out there, I think it can help this kind of stuff. But, these kids were always out there. It's just now they're finding more of a place to go to, a safer place. And I think people, until 4 or 5 years ago, I hadn't heard about the CAC. I was too busy or whatever. We reconnected and kind of learned what you did. But, if I didn't know about it, someone who runs, I was a teacher and running a summer camp, and, I'm hoping people hear this and understand what the CAC is.
Absolutely. I definitely think it contributes to more awareness out there, more education, and also parents wanting services for their child. And so better partnerships, at the DHS and state police level, that now they're sharing what resources Arkansas has. And, our governor and first lady has been very supportive of what we do. And that has been wonderful for us. And so they have made it a campaign in the state, and the state has recognized us with a CAC day that we had recently on April 11th, but also recognizing us to give us some state funding too, since we're a nonprofit.
I love that. And something that, you and I talked about yesterday, so many things are so partisan. And so, well, that's a Republican thing. Well, that's a Democrat thing. This is bipartisan.
Absolutely.
I mean, dear Lord, to help kids, this is not something that should be either. This should just be everybody should want to help kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, abuse happens everywhere. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how little money you make, what part of town you live in, what school you go to, what church you go to. It happens everywhere.
Single parent, two parents, adopt. I mean, it's
everywhere.
Y'all see it all across.
Yes.
Wrecking the water ball. Y'all see it all across the spectrum.
Yes. For sure. And we want to be there to support those kids, and we want to be there to offer hope and healing so that they can move forward. Because if a child doesn't receive, counseling and services, they can grow up having, relationship issues. They can grow up with, honestly, they could do this to other kids in the future if they don't have that healing. And there's health issues connected if you're not healed from this.
Physical health issues.
Correct. And so lots of things.
Self-harm, suicide.
Absolutely.
I mean, it has to be a big part of
crime,
suicide.
All of that.
Yeah.
So there's many stories across our state of hope and healing because of children that have received these services. And without it, they wouldn't have that hope and healing.
You guys come in, gosh, I don't know, it's been 3 years now where y'all come into our staff training.
Yes.
And I think y'all take maybe half a day, almost a full 4 or 5 hours, and you train our staff on what to look for. And we were also talking a little bit yesterday about the fact that it's one of those things that people don't want to talk about.
Exactly.
I don't want to talk about it. Maybe it's because I don't know what to do about it. So if I don't know what to do about it, it's easier to ignore it.
Yes.
And I love that's where y'all's ministry, basically, I call it a ministry, has come into play because, as y'all are talking to the staff, y'all are very open about, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what to look for, and here's how we can help, and just reach out to us. We'll handle, if you don't know what to do, we're going to handle that.
Yes.
In fact, you don't have to do anything. Just call us. Just let us, because y'all have created this place to be able to confront this issue. And I think, for school principals out there, I would hope that they would reach out with y'all. And, because I think we'd like to think it's not going on in our schools, but unfortunately it is. We'd like to think it's not going on in churches, but unfortunately it is. It's Arkansas. It's the Bible Belt, so a lot of people are in church. But, it's going to be happening here. And instead of pushing it aside and not talking about it, I think it's important to reach out to you for any group that deals with kids. And, because what y'all did, y'all equipped us. Y'all gave us, here's what you do. Here's what to look for. And our counselors felt so much better if a kid talked to them what they can do.
Absolutely. And that's a resource that we do provide. So for churches, schools, after-school activities, camps, whatever it might be, just even a business that wants some training on what do I do if I spot child abuse, or if I think something just doesn't feel right. How do I call the hotline? What do I say? Can I even call the hotline, or does it have to be someone else? No, it can be you. Anyone can call the hotline, and we can help guide a person through that. And so absolutely that training is important. Anybody that has relationships or deals with kids or works with kids should be trained on how to do it. And I'll share with you guys that the hotline in Arkansas is 844-SAVE-A-CHILD. So if you suspect abuse in Arkansas, please call that number. Other states have different numbers too. So if someone's listening from another state, there are child advocacy centers in other states, in all states actually, and they have their own hotline in those particular states.
All 50 states have some sort of a CAC.
Correct.
That's incredible. And I know you've worked with other groups.
Yes.
Y'all have been able, because I mean, y'all have done a good job here, bottom line. I mean, and you guys have worked with these others, and now y'all are starting to do some advising.
Yes.
Of these other places.
Absolutely. You know, just working with other states of maybe we're a few steps ahead of them and they come and ask us how we did something or implement a program or we did an awareness campaign a few years ago. So I did a webinar on how to do a statewide awareness campaign for child advocacy centers. And so definitely other states are looking at Arkansas of what we're doing, and that's exciting to see and to be a part of too.
So that same number reaches all these other states, or do you have to say what state? Like, you know, if I'm in Texas, I call that same number.
They would have a different number.
Oh, they would have a different number. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. This is Arkansas's child abuse hotline number.
Okay.
And it goes directly to the Arkansas State Police.
Okay. Yeah, and I've actually a couple times been on a call here with our staff, and, you know, anything that's unknown is scary.
Yes.
But, you know, now that I've been through a few of those calls with our staff, I'm able to talk our staff through, and it really is easy. The people on the line are so easy to talk to, you know, and just they do an incredible job.
Well, and too, thinking about it, by making that call, you are protecting a child. And just to think one child, I mean, even it's biblical principles. And Jesus left the 99 to go after the one. So we need to care about that one.
Absolutely.
And go after it. So if it's protecting the child of, hey, that didn't look right, that didn't feel right, the behaviors in that kid is different.
Something's off.
Something is not right. Pick up the phone and call, because you need to protect that kid. We have to step up as a community, as a state, as cities in our state to make a difference in a child's life.
I think we should protect everybody, but especially kids. And I think Jesus, gosh, you can't read the scripture and not see Jesus cared about kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, when the whole millstone verse where he said, better to tie a rope and a millstone around your neck and drown yourself than to lead a kid astray. I think he was a little serious. I'm serious. You know,
yes,
he was
for
serious
sure.
about kids.
Yes.
And, you know, all of this has caused us to really get hardcore on our prevention even here. Our CPP, our Child Protection Plan, we are big time about it over the last 3, 4, 5 years in implementing that, and then also to spot it with what you're talking about. But yeah, kids, oh my goodness, kids are so vulnerable.
Yes.
And they have to have people that are willing to stand up and say something.
Yeah, we have to be a voice for the voiceless, and that's what we are, you know, that maybe an adult can speak up if they are harmed, but a child, they don't always feel brave to stand up or empowered to stand up. If someone has been grooming them for a long time and brainwash them of, you know, your parents are going to go to jail if I tell, or, you know, things like that, that they believe that because they believe trusted adults.
And that's crazy. That's some of the things we've learned through our CPP training about the grooming process and what these people do. It's crazy. And so, I mean, it's just sitting through that is difficult, which I know that you guys do a lot of mental health training for your teams because of, I mean, when you're hearing that every day, you know, when you're inundated with those calls, when you're inundated with that kind of stuff, it's important to take a step back. I know every time we take the class, we have to take a minute.
Yeah,
after hearing that kind of stuff, because it's just not the way we think, you know, and it's not, you know, we want to ride go-karts, you know, but this stuff has to be thought about. It has to be talked about.
Yes.
So
yeah, we do. So there is a thing called secondary trauma, and that is frontline workers experience that, and that's even law enforcement, that's DHS, that's CAC staff, mental health and medical professionals too. When they hear those stories and experience it and see it with their eyes, they have trauma from it. So we actually provide counseling to all of our centers and to frontline workers across the state because we need them to be strong and vital to help these kids.
It's incredible. You know, one of the things we've gotten involved in with you guys is and help me if I butcher it, the Women of Inspiration dinner, okay, which is a big fundraiser that y'all do. We've loved being a part of that. You know, basically kind of explain that. Y'all honor some different ladies.
Yes, and so it is our statewide fundraising event. It is a gala that we have in Little Rock, and we honor a woman that has been inspired and helped children and provided resources or whatever cause that she's been involved with that is geared towards kids. So in the past, you know, we have honored Lizanne Rockefeller. We have honored John L. Hunt and Shelley McMillan, her husband, CEO of Walmart. And this year, in October, we're going to honor our First Lady of Arkansas, Susan Hutchinson, with a lifetime achievement. So because she has just day in and day out given her life for the children of Arkansas and especially the child abuse victims, that is her passion.
That's her platform. That's her passion.
Yes.
And that's incredible.
Yes.
It's important to get powerful leaders. She's a powerful leader.
Absolutely.
When you get them behind a cause, and a cause like this, you know, and this last year y'all honored Jean Jones.
We did.
Jerry Jones' wife.
Yes. And
Dallas Cowboys owner, if people don't know who that is.
Yes. She is from Arkansas, so she has connections, and they actually love Arkansas quite a bit. So it was really fun to get to know the Jones family and for them to be involved. And prior to us, us honoring her, she hadn't been involved with CACs. So now she's hooked.
I love
it. She loves the mission and what we're doing and how we're helping so many kids across the state. And so that's our passion, you know, is to, you know, I always think, and I heard a pastor say this years ago, that Jesus' heart beats for people. And I believe his heart beats for kids. Just in a passionate way. And so what are we doing in our communities to help protect kids?
I love that. Well, I would hope if people heard this and wanted to get involved that they would. You have a Facebook page.
We do. Children's Advocacy Centers of Arkansas. And we have a Facebook. We have a website so they can be involved. Reach out to me if they have questions. We're happy to give them tours of our centers. David and some of his staff actually came and toured one of our centers. And so it's just when you see it and you see those handprints and you see the child-friendly location and what the child walks through when they come, it just brings you to a deeper passion for this cause.
Yeah. Oh gosh. We went yesterday and toured, and I mean we broke down and started crying. Gosh, Katie Beth was bawling, and I was tearing up. You know, and one of the things you were sharing was about the service dog that your center is about to get, and this service dog literally can sense. You know, the way you were painting the picture, it just kind of put us right there. Of this dog would be with this child as they're in the center the whole time, as the child's telling stories. And gosh, it's just, you know.
Yeah, we have facility dogs in several of our centers, the one in Hot Springs, but also Searcy has 2 facility dogs. And the child is able to sit with the dog when they actually tell their story and when it's recorded so that they can stroke the dog, hug the dog, be with the dog, and the dog's trained to be that support and comfort. In our center in Searcy, they actually the kids write thank you notes for the dogs. And it is just heart-wrenching to read those. Just things like, you helped me be brave today.
Wow.
Thank you for being there when I had to share something scary. And then the child actually leaves with a stuffed animal dog that looks like the dog itself, so they're able to bring that home with them. So we really try everything we can to make it child-friendly, to bring comfort to the child, even though they're sharing probably the worst experience of their life.
I just feel like y'all thought about everything. You know, I feel like it's just from the kid's perspective.
Absolutely.
You know, and so just an incredible need, you know, for an area that people don't know what to do in.
That's right.
And y'all are like, call us, come here. We know what we're doing.
Yes.
And we're going to do it in a loving way, in a safe way,
Right.
in a child-centered way. And
Yep.
so it truly is a child advocacy center.
Yes.
And I love it. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, you're still a camp counselor.
Absolutely.
I mean, from when you were a child, you said in the 4th grade you wanted to be a camp counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still being that. And I love that. Well, if people have watched previous podcasts from Maylee, I mean,
Yes.
Maylee is a child therapist. I mean,
Yep.
and
She was one of my campers too.
I love that.
Yes.
And that's why Neely's been on the podcast. That's why she was going to look through the center, because she's minoring in child
Yes.
advocacy. That's actually something you can go to college for.
Yes.
And I know she even said yesterday that might be something, that she might want to do. And that's,
Right.
That's what we want to do for our staff, for them to see that you can continue to be a counselor. There's so many things, because a lot of our staff has a heart. I mean, they have a heart for kids. That's why they're here. And
Absolutely.
so it's not like they want to grow out of that. For most of them, they want to continue. How can I do that? We have pediatric dentists. We have teachers. We have coaches, just kids pastors,
Yes.
But that's what you're doing. Something really cool that if we could kind of pivot here a little bit, which we could talk about the CAC a ton, because obviously it's your passion.
Yes, for
and
sure.
I love highlighting everything that our alumni are doing. It's just, I hope I'm really going to push. We got to push this one, Ty. We got to get this one out there for people to hear this podcast for, the CAC and what she's doing. But 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know what it was, you and I sat down and we had lunch about a dream that you had, and we definitely had wanted to do here, but needed the right moment and the right place, about something you started here.
Well, it's exciting. I think that Brookhill is a place where it was so special and made such an impact on my life, and continues to make an impact on my life as an adult. So how could I give back in a way that would almost kind of leave a legacy for this happening in the future? So I came to David and really wanted to explore the idea of having a arm of a nonprofit within Brookhill, that people could give to this nonprofit, and we could scholarship kids to go to camp. And so David and I talked back and forth about this, like we could do this, we could do it this way. And so a couple of years later, we dove in. And that's what happened. We started Brookhill Children's Fund, which is the nonprofit that people can donate tax deductible so that children can experience Brookhill. And maybe they can't afford it, or they can only afford part of Brookhill. We want to help those kids. We've seen amazing things happen in the last couple of years. One that I was reading recently, that a parent had recently died.
Wow.
And mom is now single mom, just picking up the pieces. But the one thing the kids want, there's 2 kids, they want to go to Brookhill this summer. So we're going to make it happen.
I love that. That's just incredible. We got different alumni that are involved, whether they're on the board, whether they are in the different committees, whether they're serving. And obviously we're growing this. This is, what is this, year 3?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And we're about to meet here in a little bit. We got some alumni that have come to the ranch, and we're about to meet and kind of tour around and show them what we're doing, and then look at those different scholarships. How many are we hoping to give out this year?
So we're hoping, I think last year we gave out 7 or 8, and
Right.
this summer we're going to be able to give out about 22 scholarships. So,
That's
I mean,
incredible.
when I found that out
That's
recently,
incredible.
like kind of looking at the numbers and everything, I texted David and was like, happy tears. Like this is my dream that I
Yep.
wanted to give back to Brookhill.
Yep. I absolutely love that. And And so I know with the BCF, we have, the number one thing is the scholarships, but I know
Yes.
there's other dreams and goals. And I
Absolutely.
know one thing that was cool was a couple years back when the hurricane hit Lake
Yes.
Charles, we were able, we got with y'all and said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, can we push this on our social media for people to give to the BCF and those funds be designated for us to go down and help Lake Charles? And we
Yes.
did. That was a way for us to go.
Yes.
And so it's just a great mechanism for people to give, for us to get involved into certain, if we see a need, we want to be able to let our Brookhill people know about it,
Yes.
give to it, use those funds to go and help. So it's just a way for us to help and get involved. And so I love that. I absolutely love it. I appreciate what you're doing. How can people give to the BCF?
So there is Venmo, there's PayPal, and it's all connected on Brookhill's website too, and Facebook page. But reach out, even if it's $10, $5, just know that it's going to help a kid come to camp and have the Brookhill experience. And all those alum out there, you want to share that with other kids.
I love that. And we're going to hear more and more stories coming up
Yes.
about, especially 22 kids this summer. I
Yes.
can't wait to hear those stories. Well, Elizabeth, I appreciate you being on here. I love being able to talk about what our alumni are doing.
Yes.
And you're still wearing the red T-shirt. It's funny, we were looking at the red T-shirts behind you. You said you probably have worn all those styles
I have.
over the years, and I love that. I can't wait to have you back on probably someday and talk about what all the CAC is doing. I hope people maybe learn what the Child Advocacy Center is.
Yes.
And can go and get involved. That'd be cool to hear, hey, I heard that on the podcast, and now they're a giver,
Absolutely.
or they're involved, or, they were able to help a child. And
Absolutely.
that's what it's all about.
It
Gosh,
is.
appreciate you, Liz.
Thank you.
We worked together just a few years ago in the 90s, and still working together today. So,
Absolutely.
loved hanging out.